The wooden gavel slammed down with a sound that cut through the air like a gunshot. The courtroom fell into silence. Every eye turned to the boy standing at the defendant's table. 17 years old, shoulders squared, face calm despite the weight of humiliation pressing down on him. "Just another lost cause," Judge Wallace muttered, leaning forward from his high bench. His voice carried a sharp edge. "I've seen your kind 100 times, no direction, no discipline, no father to guide you." The boy did not flinch. His name was Marcus Reed, a scholarship student, an inventor, and the pride of his small neighborhood school. But here, under the glare of Judge Wallace's piercing eyes, he was treated as nothing more than a statistic. The judge jabbed his finger toward Marcus. "Tell me, boy, where is your father? Or is he too ashamed to show his face here?" The room shifted uncomfortably. Lawyers exchanged whispers. Officers smirked. Marcus inhaled slowly, his gaze never breaking from the man towering above him. And then, with the calmest voice imaginable, he said, "Your Honor, may I call him?" A ripple of surprise spread across the courtroom. Judge Wallace leaned back with a thin, mocking smile. "By all means, if you think he'll answer." The boy reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and began to dial. The entire room held its breath. His voice stayed steady even as the silence pressed down on him. "Dad, the judge here says you failed to raise me right. He's wondering where you are. Could you come to courtroom 6B right now?" No one yet knew who was on the other end of that line. No one knew that this single call would ignite a storm reaching far beyond the walls of this courthouse. But to understand how Marcus Reed had come to this moment, we must step back just a few hours. That morning, Marcus had walked confidently into the county courthouse carrying something extraordinary, a machine he had designed with his own hands, an advanced air quality monitoring system capable of measuring invisible toxins in the air. Data he had collected showed that pollution levels in his neighborhood were triple those of the wealthier districts across town. It was evidence of environmental neglect, and today, he was scheduled to present his findings to the county's environmental committee. But the moment Marcus stepped through security, the trouble began. The metal detector screeched as his device passed through. Officer Grant, a heavy-set man with sharp eyes, seized the machine with rough hands. "What's this contraption?" he demanded, twisting it as though it were a weapon. "It's an air quality monitor," Marcus replied politely. "For my presentation, today before the committee." Grant narrowed his eyes. "Looks suspicious to me." Marcus reached for his backpack. "I have documentation, hands where I can see them," Grant barked, drawing the attention of everyone in the lobby. Within seconds, 2 more guards rushed over. "Suspicious device. Subject uncooperative," Grant reported, his hand hovering near his holster. Marcus froze, his pulse racing. People stared. A white college student carrying a large science project board passed through another scanner without even being stopped. But Marcus was surrounded, treated as a threat. And then, from across the lobby, Judge Wallace appeared. His black robes swayed as he approached, arms crossed, eyes locked on Marcus. "What is all this?" he asked coldly. "Your Honor," Marcus said evenly, "I have an excused absence from school today. I'm presenting to the Environmental Committee at 11 o'clock. Dr. Adams is expecting me." "Environmental Committee," Wallace repeated with a mocking chuckle. "In my courthouse? I've seen a lot of excuses, but that one takes the cake." "It's not an excuse, sir," Marcus replied, keeping his voice steady. "It's the truth." Judge Wallace checked his watch, then gestured to the guards. "Bring him to my courtroom first. Let's see what story he spins under oath." The guards escorted Marcus away. His carefully built machine was yanked apart piece by piece in Officer Grant's hands. Marcus glanced over his shoulder and saw something that told him exactly what he was up against. Judge Wallace wasn't curious, he wasn't confused, he was smiling. And that smile carried the weight of something far more dangerous than suspicion, because this was not about a device. This was about power. The heavy doors to courtroom 6B creaked, open, and Marcus Reed was marched inside. The benches were empty. The room, stripped of its usual audience, felt colder, harsher, as if the walls themselves were waiting for a spectacle. Judge Wallace settled into his chair with deliberate slowness, scrolling through his phone while Marcus's dismantled project was dumped onto a side table in pieces. A wire rolled to the floor, clinking softly. "Explain yourself," Wallace said without looking up. Marcus took a steady breath. "It's an air quality monitor, Your Honor. It measures particulate matter in low-income neighborhoods. I've been gathering data for 6 months. My results show a direct correlation between high pollution levels and increased respiratory illness rates." Finally, the judge looked at him. His eyes carried no curiosity, only disdain. "And why exactly are you dragging your so-called science project into my courthouse?" "The Environmental Committee meets here every month," Marcus replied. "I was invited to present my findings today." Dr. Adams confirmed it. Wallace waved his hand dismissively and tossed Marcus's papers aside without reading them. "I see nothing in my schedule about student presentations. Seems to me you're trying to play smart in a place where you don't belong." Marcus stood straighter. "The confirmation went out last week, Your Honor. All committee members received it. Are you telling me how to run my courtroom?" Wallace's voice sharpened like a blade. Marcus froze. "No, sir. Just providing information." The judge rose to his feet and began circling slowly around the bench, his robe brushing the wooden panels. "I've sat in this chair for more than 2 decades. I've seen every trick, every excuse, every attempt to skirt authority. And I always know when someone is hiding something." He slammed his hand against the table. The force sent a sensor from Marcus's project crashing to the floor, shattering into fragments. Marcus's stomach dropped. Months of work. Gone in seconds. "That was my research, sir," he said, voice trembling despite his effort to remain calm. "Research?" Wallace chuckled darkly. "Is that what they're calling it these days? Who built this? Certainly not you. Some adult must have done the work for you." "I designed it myself," Marcus insisted. "Every component was purchased with grant money from the State Science Foundation." The judge sneered. "A likely story. Let me be clear. This courthouse is not your playground. And this," he lifted a circuit board with exaggerated suspicion, "is now evidence of a security risk. It will remain here until I say otherwise." Marcus clenched his jaw. "May I have a receipt for my property, Your Honor?" The request seemed to hit a nerve. Wallace's smirk faltered. "Who's been giving you legal advice, boy? Don't play games with me." Marcus said nothing. Inside, though, his resolve hardened. This was no misunderstanding. It was deliberate. The judge leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I'll teach you something today. People like you don't come into this building and make demands. You leave knowing your place." The words burned like acid, but Marcus knew something the judge didn't. His place wasn't where Wallace thought it was. His place was wherever he chose to stand. As he waited in the hallway, minutes ticking by, Marcus saw the committee members filing into room 402 upstairs. His presentation time was approaching, but the guards blocked him at every attempt to enter. "No approval from the judge, no entry," they said flatly. And then, through the crowd, Marcus saw a familiar figure. Dr. Adams, his mentor, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, spotted him immediately. "There you are," Adams exclaimed. "Why aren't you setting up? We start in 10 minutes. "My project's been confiscated," Marcus answered quietly. "Judge Wallace says it's suspicious." Dr. Adams's face tightened with disbelief. "That's absurd. You're our keynote student presenter." Together, they marched back toward Wallace's courtroom. Marcus's heart pounded, but his resolve grew stronger with each step, because this was no longer just about a science project. This was about something much bigger. Dr. Adams pushed open the courtroom doors, his presence commanding enough to draw Judge Wallace's eyes up from his phone. The judge straightened, smoothing his robe as if appearances could disguise what he had done. "Judge Wallace," Dr. Adams began firmly, "there's been a mistake. Marcus Reed is today's invited presenter for the County Environmental Committee. He's not here as a defendant. He's here as a researcher." Wallace's tone dripped with sarcasm. "Researcher? This young man brought unauthorized electronics into a federal building. That requires investigation. Safety must come first. It's a science project I personally approved. Dr. Adams shot back. He's one of our brightest students. His findings matter. The judge's expression hardened. Do you know where this boy is from? Did you run background checks on him, or are you just dazzled by his little gadgets? Marcus felt heat rising in his chest, but forced himself to stay calm. Sir, I was born in Detroit. We moved here 3 years ago. My family's lived in the States for generations. Wallace made a dismissive sound. You'll get your device back when proper authorities clear it. Maybe. Until then, you can attend the committee meeting empty-handed. Consider it a lesson. The words stung like acid, but Marcus refused to bow his head. He followed Dr. Adams out of the courtroom, his project still in pieces on the judge's table. Minutes later, the doors of room 402 opened and Marcus stepped inside. The committee members sat around a long table, 12 pairs of eyes turning toward him. Observers lined the walls, notebooks ready. The air was thick with expectation. Dr. Adams cleared his throat. I apologize for the delay. There's been a complication. Marcus will present without his materials. A murmur spread, pity on some faces, skepticism on others. Marcus stepped forward, heart pounding but voice steady. Good afternoon. My project was confiscated under suspicion. I'll have to present from memory. I hope you'll allow me the chance to explain my findings. Would he? Whispers grew louder. A woman in the back scribbled something down, shaking her head. Marcus swallowed his frustration and began. For 6 months, I measured particulate matter in neighborhoods across the city. In wealthier districts, the levels were low. In neighborhoods like mine, the levels were 3 times higher. I tracked spikes in pollution and compared them to emergency room visits. The correlation was undeniable. He borrowed a notepad from the table, sketching crude diagrams, circles for neighborhoods, arrows for pollution flow, bars for hospitalization rates. Environmental laws exist to protect everyone, he continued, his voice gaining strength. But my data shows those laws are not enforced equally. Some neighborhoods get clean air, others are left to choke. The room leaned forward. What began as scattered whispers turned into quiet focus. Even without slides, even without his machine, Marcus's words carried weight. When he finished, silence hung in the air for a heartbeat. Then came applause. Slow at first, then growing. Committee Chairwoman Lawson rose to her feet. Remarkable work, Marcus, especially under these circumstances. Your findings deserve wider attention. Would you consider presenting at the state conference next month? Marcus's throat tightened with gratitude. I'd be honored. Relief washed over him, but only for a moment, because as the meeting ended, he knew the battle for his project was far from over. In the restroom, away from the noise, Marcus leaned against the wall, hands shaking as the adrenaline drained away. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Straight to voicemail. Dad, he said quietly. Something happened at the courthouse. Judge Wallace took my project. I managed the presentation, but I need your advice. Call me when you can. When Marcus stepped back into the hallway, Dr. Adams was waiting. You did brilliantly, he said with quiet pride. But now we need to get your equipment back. Together, they turned back toward the judge's chambers, and what awaited them there would change everything. The corridor outside Judge Wallace's chambers hummed with the muffled sounds of distant hearings. Marcus and Dr. Adams stood waiting, ignored by the clerk who motioned for them to sit. Time dragged, each second another reminder that his project, his proof, was in the judge's grip. Finally, the heavy door opened. Judge Wallace ended a call, his posture shifting when he saw Dr. Adams. Straighter, more formal. The arrogance remained, but thinner now, as though even he recognized the weight of who stood before him. Judge Wallace, Dr. Adams began firmly. There's been a serious mistake. Marcus was invited here. You've confiscated a student's research project, work that was scheduled to be presented under official approval. The judge waved him off. This young man dragged unauthorized equipment into my courthouse. Security has protocols. He'll get his device back once it's inspected. Until then, he learns that rules exist for a reason. It's not a suspicious device, Dr. Adams countered, voice rising. It's a scientific tool I personally vetted. Wallace's eyes narrowed, his voice sharpening like a blade. Did you run background checks on him? Do you even know where he's from? People like him bring excuses, not solutions. Marcus clenched his fists at his sides. Heat burned in his chest, but he answered calmly, I was born in Detroit, sir. My family's been here for generations. This project is mine, and I have the documentation to prove it. The judge sneered. Your project will remain under inspection. You may attend the committee meeting without it. Think of it as a lesson in preparation. The dismissal hit harder than a slammed gavel. Dr. Adams pressed his lips together but knew pressing further would only make things worse. They left the courtroom with Wallace's voice echoing behind them like a curse. That afternoon, Marcus delivered his presentation from memory. Against all odds, he captivated the committee. His words painted pictures more vivid than any slides, his hand-drawn diagrams carrying truths too sharp to ignore. By the end, they applauded him, promising his work would reach a larger stage. But the victory was bittersweet, because his project, the months of data, the sensors that had cost him endless nights and small grants, the evidence he had collected, was still locked away, reduced to scraps under Wallace's control. Later, as the committee adjourned, Marcus excused himself, retreating to a quiet restroom. His reflection in the mirror showed a boy who looked calm on the outside but carried a storm inside. He pulled out his phone and tried again, straight to voicemail. Dad, he whispered, Judge Wallace still has my project. I did my best without it, but I don't know what comes next. Please call me back. When he stepped into the hallway, Dr. Adams was waiting. You were extraordinary in there, he said, his voice low, but brimming with pride. I've never seen such composure under fire, but now we fight to get your project back. That device doesn't just hold data, it holds proof, and Wallace knows it. As they turned back toward the judge's chambers, Marcus's phone buzzed with a new message, unknown number. 4 chilling words. Your project. Disposal tomorrow. Marcus's chest tightened. His heart thudded painfully as he reread the message. Disposal. Tomorrow. Months of evidence. Months of sacrifice. All about to be destroyed. And in that moment, Marcus realized something devastating. This wasn't just about suspicion. This was deliberate. Wallace wasn't afraid of a device. He was afraid of the truth it revealed. The text on Marcus's phone burned into his mind. Your project. Disposal tomorrow. He read it again, his stomach twisting. It was signed off with 2 words that only deepened the dread. Sorry, friend. Somebody inside the courthouse had taken a risk to warn him. Someone who knew what was happening. Marcus's hands trembled as he called back the one person he trusted besides his father, his Uncle David, a civil rights attorney. They're destroying my project, Marcus whispered when David answered. Tomorrow morning, Judge Wallace ordered it. On the other end, his uncle's voice was calm but urgent. Listen to me. Document everything. Names, times, exact words, keep a record. I'll start making calls, don't let them intimidate you. That night, Marcus sat in his garage, surrounded by broken wires, empty soda cans, and his mother's worried eyes. He worked furiously, trying to rebuild his machine from spare parts and memory. Marcus, his mother said softly from the doorway, sometimes fighting isn't worth it. This is worth it, he replied without looking up. His hands moved, quickly, connecting circuits, adjusting sensors. This isn't just about me anymore. When Wallace confiscated my project, he wasn't just taking a machine. He was trying to silence proof. Proof that his courthouse sits in one of the worst air quality zones in the state. His mother's eyes widened. You think that's why he wants it gone? Marcus soldered 2 wires together, sparks lighting his determined face. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, Marcus was at the courthouse steps before the sun had risen. His uncle's paperwork sat neatly in his hands, notarized copies of grant receipts, project documentation, proof of ownership. He had everything in order. Judge Wallace arrived in a sleek black car, his robe slung over his arm. The flicker of surprise in his eyes when he saw Marcus waiting told him everything. "Persistent, aren't you?" Wallace muttered. "Yes, sir," Marcus said firmly. "I have documentation proving my project's legitimacy. I respectfully request its immediate return." The judge barely glanced at the papers. "File them with the clerk. I have a full docket." "Sir," Marcus pressed, "security plans to dispose of it today. Without due process, that's destruction of private property." Wallace's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me, boy?" "No, Your Honor. I'm exercising my rights as a citizen." The judge stepped closer, his breath hot, his words venom. "You have no rights here. I decide what happens in my courthouse." Marcus's jaw tightened. "The courthouse belongs to the people, Your Honor." For the first time, Wallace's face flushed. His lips tightened and he barked to the nearest guard. "Officer Grant, this boy is causing a disturbance. Escort him off the property." Marcus stood his ground. "I'm standing on public steps, with legal documents." The judge snatched the papers from his hands, scanning them with a twisted grin. "These look like falsified documents. Confiscate them." Grant hesitated. Even he looked uneasy. "Sir, you heard me," Wallace snapped. "Confiscate them." Marcus held tight, his voice unwavering. "These are notarized records. If you destroy them, it proves exactly what you're trying to hide." Before the guard could move, an administrator rushed out. "Judge Wallace, there's a call for you, urgent." The judge's eyes flicked between Marcus and the administrator. After a long pause, he shoved the papers back into Marcus's chest. "This isn't over." He stormed inside. Marcus turned to Officer Grant. "Please, just let me recover the data drive. That's all I ask. A single chip." Grant's eyes flickered with something human for once. Sympathy, or maybe fear. But then he looked down the hall, where Wallace had vanished, and muttered, "Kid, walk away. Don't make this harder." Marcus didn't answer. Because in his heart, he knew walking away wasn't an option. And whoever had made that urgent call to Wallace, whoever had the power to shake the judge, was someone Marcus needed to find. Marcus sat on a hard bench outside the clerk's office. He refused to leave. Attorneys passed in a steady stream. Some glanced at him with sympathy. Others looked away as if justice were a hallway you could choose to ignore. A woman stopped. Mid-40s, clear eyes, no nonsense. "I've seen you here since morning," she said. "I'm Nora Lee, public defender. What's going on?" "My project was confiscated," Marcus answered. "Security plans to destroy it today. Judge Wallace ordered it." She nodded once as if a piece had clicked into place. "Come with me." They took the elevator down to the basement level. The air changed. Colder. Mechanical. Through a small window in a steel door, Marcus spotted his device on a metal table, wires splayed like veins. A blue chip at the center glinted under fluorescent light. "That's it," he said. "Months of data are on that drive." A guard blocked the doorway. "No access without authorization. It is illegal to dispose of personal property without due process," Nora replied. "I am filing an emergency motion right now." "File whatever you want," the guard said. "Orders are orders." The elevator doors opened again. "Judge." Wallace stepped out. He saw them. He smiled the way a man smiles when he believes the outcome is already written. "Ms. Lee," he said, "escorting troublemakers today?" "This student is an invited researcher," she answered. "You are about to destroy irreplaceable data." "It's a security risk," Wallace said. He gestured to the guard. "Remove them from this floor, and ban the boy from the building." Marcus stood a little taller. "Sir, I have been respectful. Why are you doing this?" "Because I can," the judge replied. "Some people need to learn where they stand." The guard ushered them upstairs. As the doors shut, Marcus caught one last glimpse through the window. Wallace had picked up a hammer. Outside in the sunlight, Nora turned to him. "We are not done, but we need leverage." Marcus pulled out his phone. He stared at a number he rarely used. He pressed call. "Dad," he said when the line clicked. "They are destroying it now." His father's voice came through steady and low. "I have been briefed. Put me on speaker." "This is Nora Lee," she said. "We need immediate access to the judge." "Show security this number," his father replied. He recited a federal extension. "If anyone refuses, have them call me. Do not argue. Just insist." They walked back into the courthouse. The same guard who had blocked them folded his arms. The judge banned the boy. "Please call this number," Nora said, holding up her phone. "Right now." The guard dialed. He listened. His posture changed. "Yes, sir. Understood." He set the phone down and swallowed. "Proceed to chambers immediately." They were led past security, past the courtroom, past the hallway where minutes earlier they had been told to leave. The clerk tried to stop them and then stepped aside, pale after seeing the number. Inside chambers, Judge Wallace stood behind his desk. Marcus's project sat in front of him. The hammer lay to the side. "This harassment will end," Wallace said. "I have made a lawful decision." "Please call this number," Nora replied, placing the phone on his desk. He scoffed, but he dialed. "This is Judge Wallace." He paused. "Who am I speaking with?" His face changed. The color drained. His free hand trembled on the edge of the desk. "Yes," he said. "I understand." He tried again. But the device was... He stopped. "Yes, Mr. Attorney General." He returned the phone without meeting Marcus's eyes. "Your property will be returned at once," he said. His voice had lost its iron. "In its original condition." "And with all data intact," Marcus said. "Yes," Wallace whispered. "All data intact." They left chambers with the device and the blue chip secure in Nora's bag. In the hallway, Marcus's phone rang again. He answered on speaker. "Is it resolved?" "Is it?" his father asked. "It is," Marcus said. "Thank you." "Good. Please hand the phone to Judge Wallace." The judge stepped out of chambers at that exact moment. Marcus held out the phone. Wallace took it as if it were heavier than steel. "This is Judge Wallace." The voice on the line was calm and unmistakable. "Judge Wallace, this is James Reed, Attorney General of the United States. I will be in your courthouse at 9 tomorrow morning to discuss your treatment of my son and the pattern of rulings in your court. Clear your schedule." "Yes," Wallace said, the words scraped out of him. "I will." He handed the phone back and retreated without a word. Nora stared at Marcus. "Your father is the Attorney General." "He is," Marcus said. "We keep it quiet." The next morning the courthouse looked different. News vans idled at the curb. Agents stood in the lobby with quiet purpose. In a conference room upstairs, maps covered one wall. Red pins, blue pins, lines that traced the story data had been trying to tell for years. James Reed stood at the head of the table, tall, composed, the same steady focus his son carried. "You did well," he said to Marcus. "You stood your ground without losing your head." Nora briefed the team. Marcus's readings matched complaint patterns. Neighborhoods with the worst air also faced the harshest sentencing and the least protection. The data is clean. The curve is real. An analyst pointed to a series of charts. "We overlaid environmental enforcement logs with sentencing records. The neighborhoods with poor enforcement are the same neighborhoods where longer sentences were handed down for identical offenses." Another official tapped a set of call records. "We pulled logs from chambers. There are repeated calls between Wallace's office and Senator Cole's staff before key environmental cases and zoning hearings." Marcus looked at his device. The new wires he had soldered last night held firm. "That is why he wanted it destroyed," he said. The pattern was visible to anyone who looked. James Reed nodded. "Today we ask why it was allowed to exist." The door opened. Judge Wallace entered with his attorney. He tried to look unbothered. The effort failed. "This is a misunderstanding," he began. A school project created a security situation. My actions were reasonable. This meeting is not about a student project, James Reed said. It is about your court. Sit down. For an hour, the officials presented what they had found. Sentencing patterns that diverged by neighborhood. Dismissals of environmental cases tied to a development timeline. Call logs aligned with rulings. Financial transfers flowing into shell companies connected to Senator Cole's partners. Wallace's attorney objected at every turn. Each objection meant more data. Each protest met another chart. Finally, Wallace spoke. I want an agreement. His attorney tugged his sleeve. We are making no statements. James Reed slid a document across the table. You are placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The Judicial Conduct Panel will convene this afternoon. You cannot do this, Wallace said. I am not doing this, Reed replied. Your record is. By evening, the news had spread. The panel had removed Wallace from his docket. A federal investigation opened into environmental enforcement and judicial conduct in 3 counties. Senator Cole issued a statement about cooperation and then left the city in a black car with the windows up. Marcus presented to the Environmental Committee the next day with the device working and the data on screen. The room was full. People stood along the back wall. Agents watched from the corners, quiet and still. These readings were collected over 6 months, Marcus said. The pattern is clear. Some communities breathe safe air. Others pay the price. Laws on paper did not mean protection in practice. The chair spoke when he finished. We will fund an expansion of your monitors across the city. This data will guide enforcement. No neighborhood will be invisible. Calls and meetings multiplied. 3 judges in neighboring districts asked for leave. The State Ethics Office opened 2 new files. The EPA requested Marcus's model for a pilot in other cities. The story moved faster than rumors. It moved with numbers. Weeks passed, then months. The work spread. At the judicial hearing, Nora presented correlations that any first-year student could follow. The panel heard phone logs and watched timelines overlaid like map layers. Wallace took the stand, smaller without his robe. He denied intent. He admitted disparity. He paused too long when asked about calls with Senator Cole. He asked for consideration. He offered names. He offered dates. He offered the structure behind the curtain. The panel recessed so sworn statements could be taken. That night, the senator resigned. The development partnerships changed hands. Compliance teams appeared at sites that had not seen an inspector in years. The air monitors hummed on light poles and school roofs, sending numbers anyone could read. 3 months later, Marcus stood at a podium in the Capitol. He had been invited to speak at a conference on environmental justice. His device sat to his right, improved and encased in clean housing. Behind him, a map showed how the red zones had shifted to orange, and then to pale yellow, where enforcement had finally reached. Justice is not abstract, he said. It is measured in the air we breathe and the rules we live under. It is measured in who is heard when they say the air hurts their children. Agency leaders described new programs, audits by neighborhood, not just by industry, public dashboards, triggers that forced reviews when numbers crossed a line. The model carried his name only because someone needed to own the line that started it. 1 year later, he walked past the courthouse where it had begun. The plaque near the entrance read, Environmental Justice Review Board. Inside the lobby, an exhibit showed his original prototype next to a professionally built network unit. Kids pressed buttons that lit up maps of improvement. Nora met him by the display. 17 judges reviewed, she said. 5 resigned, 8 placed under monitoring. Wallace is doing community service as part of a plea. He spends Tuesdays in the neighborhoods he discounted. His father joined them with a folder under his arm. Asthma admissions are down, he said. 30% across the affected zones. Violations are flagged earlier. Cleanup follows faster. The numbers are moving the right way. They walked outside. On the corner, 2 students mounted a new sensor on a pole while a teacher checked a tablet. A park stood where an illegal dump had once been. Someone laughed. The sound carried on air that no longer stung. "For the record," James Reed said, "your scholarship letter came this morning. Environmental science and law. Full ride. They want you to lead a statewide expansion." Marcus looked at the courthouse, then at the school across the street. "I only wanted to help my block breathe easier." "That is how change begins," his father said. "One block, one device, one person who will not step back." They reached the corner and stopped. The new monitor blinked to life. Numbers crawled across the teacher's screen. "Your place is wherever you choose to stand," James added. Marcus watched the values settle into the safe range. The screen turned from amber to green. He felt the weight he had been carrying ease, without disappearing. Work remained, but the air felt honest. He lifted his chin. "Then I will stand here, and I will keep going."